Hello, everybody. This is your Gaza War Sit Rep on day 131 of the war. We're doing military analysis that does not disdain Arab military capacities and understands guerrilla warfare. Hey, John.
Hi, Justin. I like the
John,
intro.
John, I watched you on Electronic Intifada's live stream today, in case people missed it. Um, but I don't think we got a chance. I don't think you got a chance. I got a chance, but I don't think you ever got a chance to break down Syed Hassan Nasrallah's speech. Did you guys?
Well, I also was watching you,
Yeah.
and I watched you do that, and I thought you did a great job. You pulled
However,
the points that I would have pulled.
all of them, weren't there some other things you wanted to emphasize?
What were they? I just thought the spy stuff was just really interesting because he wasn't just saying that they can spy on you through your phone. He
Mhm.
was making a distinction between the quality of the data that is being acquired through that and
Yeah.
the way that it can be mapped by using your family members. That level of detail is very unusual. He often is just he doesn't dig down on things in this
Yeah.
detail that he really did, and was just talking about how, I mean, basically he issued a fatwa, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Essentially was like this: you put it in a Faraday cage
Yeah.
from now until the end of this war, whenever
Yeah.
that is,
Yeah.
and like, get over your phones, people. Your
Yeah.
phones are not that big a deal, and in
Yeah.
the grand scheme of what we're facing right now, it's absolutely ludicrous to be losing these like high
Lives.
quality fighters and innocent civilians that are in their families. Yeah, it's a big mistake, and he treated it like it was, and I thought that that was really interesting. And also talked just about that kind of like doorbell, like ring light stuff that people have. That's like
Yeah, the Amazon
just
Ring
how
or whatever,
stupid that is, and
facing the
like,
street and giving your data to the internet.
yeah, and he basically just said it's your duty, right? It's your
Yeah.
revolutionary duty in a time of war to behave this way. And I think that was interesting. I thought that the 2 million part where
Hmm.
he said that it's not going to be 200,000, it's going to be 2 million. And the Israelis actually were talking all week about that, which is why I think he does it, right? He's so on top of Israeli press.
Yeah.
But they talked, like Gallant talked about how Haifa was going to be in play, right? And that precision missiles on Haifa can carry heavy payloads and hit exactly where you want in this port city that has offshore installations, that has a massive chemical plant, that is near an air base, that is just a complete quantum leap of war compared to the Katyusha rockets that were fired in 2006 that paralyzed Israel with 4,000 rockets in a 32-day war. The Israelis are talking about 4,000 rockets a day, and qualitatively different rockets. So they're talking about destruction. If Israel really does want to fight, Hezbollah has the ability to really destroy significant parts of the state of Israel. Not the kibbutz, not the farming villages in the north. They have the capacity. Haifa's a major city, and there's major chemical plant, chemical refinery in Haifa. Civilian infrastructure, like civic infrastructure, like the train stations, and just and that's just Haifa, and they have missiles that can reach all over Palestine now. But just even right away, the risk of, because the missiles are too fast, they're coming in too many of them to be stopped by the Iron Dome. And Haifa's too close. There's not enough time to react. So it's a really that threat, which he just said it in one line. He didn't
Yep.
list all their capabilities. He didn't, he just said it in one line. I mean, he has listed their capabilities at times.
Well,
Like,
I did
uh,
see a speech where he from I think it was I don't think it was from this war. I think it was from years ago. And he was sort of making this gesture with his hands. I don't know if you remember this, but he
yeah,
was sort of like airports, power plants, water plants,
yeah,
military airports.
yeah.
And he's just kind of like
Civilian
wiping them out.
airports,
Yeah.
defense ministry.
Yeah.
Um,
And he was like, you can count how many missiles it would take. He was basically talking to the Israelis directly, and he was like,
yeah,
count how many missiles it would take for us to do that.
not that many.
Not
And
that
the
many.
answer is not that many, and also not that much time. So the way where the war to escalate um, in earnest,
Yeah.
the destruction would be massive within um, short minutes of time, and the first few days would just be devastating. It would be a crazy war.
So there
But Nasrallah
was,
said, "Bring it on," basically, right?
yeah,
He said, "We
yeah,
don't want war, but we don't react." The other thing that he said is, we don't react to just because Gallant says, that they're looking to wind down in the north. That's not the way it goes. We said that the war goes as long as the war goes in Gaza.
yeah,
You're not dialing down certain sectors of this fight. That's not how it works.
yeah.
If you want to escalate to war, we're ready for war. And they are ready for war. And I don't know. I mean, maybe you could say the Israelis have gotten experience fighting in Gaza that will help them that they didn't have coming into this war in Lebanon, but they're also
Like
beaten
how to stay
down.
away from windows, um, how to support their armor with dismounted infantry, how to, uh,
Hezbollah put a cornet. They'll put a cornet into that building full of people. The Palestinians are trying to fire an RPG-7 with
yeah,
a warhead and try to get it through the slats of the window. Hezbollah would blast that with a cornet and blow it out.
yeah,
It's a completely different game. And 2006 was a different game for the Israelis too, because that's when they would like take over houses. They only made it to the very beginning of the villages in the south, but they would take over houses, and then the Hezbollah fighters would come up and fight them inside the same house as they were in,
yeah. They had
which
already
really,
figured out which house they were going to take.
yeah,
So Hezbollah, speaking of which, escalation today, there was a major missile attack in Safed and Meron. Uh, they think 2 deaths, several injuries, but this apparently was a big deal, and Iron Dome didn't catch it. So,
and Safed is one of the furthest that they've fired in this war in terms of this war
uh,
that goes by type of munition you use and how deep inside each other's
and
country you fire it. So Safed
and
is significant because of its depth inside.
and these are
Uh,
military facilities as usual that that Hezbollah has attacked, and then we had Israel doing a big bombing of a civilian house, killing a whole family in Lebanon, which is also a major escalation, and that's we can assume there'll be retaliation for that
yes.
from Hezbollah because they've said that they've said uh, we answer all of these attacks on civilians. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I mean, some Israeli like defense people that have, really good connections and are talking to the people that are planning. Um, but they're talking about just letting the winter pass and then in the spring go to Lebanon when they don't have to go up. They don't go up the snow-packed hills. Did you ever see that
oh
Hezbollah
yeah, oh I've
propaganda
seen it.
video where
Yeah,
they shoot in
the ski troops.
the Alpine ski unit that
Yeah, they
are.
have. Yeah, talk about like Arab military capacities.
Yeah, we
People
might
who.
actually have to call that up if people haven't seen
Yeah, yeah.
it.
Have you?
Because
You know where to look for it.
it's militarily extremely effective.
If you can send that to me in our
Yeah,
little chat,
I think I can find it.
I'll post it for people. Because yeah, so that's Hezbollah. We had the Nasrallah speech, and the major missile attack on Safed and Meron, both of which have been hit before by Hezbollah, um, and then this major attack on a civilian target in Nabatea in Lebanon by Israel. While you're calling that up, we can summarize some of the Yemen. The Ansar Allah made a little summary of their own. I guess yesterday. Oh, no, today. Statistics regarding Yemen's operations in the Red Sea. This is a good channel too. Underrated. I haven't
Oh
mentioned this
yeah,
channel
she's
enough.
great.
Revolutionary M, uh, Revolutionary EM. So if you follow that on Twitter, that's a very good channel. A spokesperson for the government in Sana'a releases statistics regarding Yemen's operations in the Red Sea. 34 ships have been targeted. Yemen has banned the entry of 99 American products. Yemen has information about UAE mercenaries. So that's interesting. They're still working on trying to get other Gulf countries, Persian Gulf countries like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi to fight Yemen for them. And it's been remarkably ineffective so far, but you can't blame the US for trying. They're going to keep trying the same tricks over and over again, hoping the result will be different. Did you find it?
Did they take it offline?
They might have. So maybe it's a matter of operational security. But anyway, let's describe it for people. There's Hezbollah made a video of in the mountains of Lebanon,
Yeah,
ski troops basically engaging in target practice while on skis, hitting targets,
yeah.
with great accuracy and
Jumping off
what else?
snowmobiles, landing
Yeah,
on their skis, jumping off the back of the snowmobile, landing on their skis, setting themselves and shooting at targets.
yeah,
A snowmobile with a cornet on the back. They had ski like acumen and
yeah.
uh, military acumen, and
So
it's basically the best video that's ever been made.
but I haven't, I'm not, please don't take this as me throwing down the gauntlet or wanting to watch such a thing, but I really haven't seen Israelis, an IDF equivalent of that.
No, there's not. That's why they don't want the war till the spring.
Yeah. They don't want it in the spring either. But
No, I don't think they do.
but again, I also thought they would have stopped this war by now a long time ago. So a lot of my assumptions about how the world works have been upended for months.
Yeah, well, they passed 1,000 attacks. Those attacks that you just reported on takes Hezbollah over 1,000 attacks since the
Yeah.
8th of October when they joined the war.
Yeah. So Gaza front, there's a new video from Qassam, Hamas's armed wing, and there's a speech as part of this video, and the speech says something that we've been saying. So they kind of confirmed what we've been saying. They said basically they said, and I got it from Arya's Twitter again, and I'll just put it up here, but I'll read parts of it to you. The deputy, oh yeah, so the enemy justifies its killing of civilians by saying that we the fighters are present among civilians, but we fighters are present in an area completely devoid of civilians. That's, I mean, you know the enemy doesn't display its power over us, the men on the battlefield. The enemy chooses the field location. They order the people to evacuate, and the people evacuate. Then we go to the place where they ordered the evacuation. But this cowardly criminal enemy goes to kill our children in their homes, in safe homes, our wives, women, children, and other people's children. As for us, we are on the battlefield, so come to us and we will show you how men fight.
Yeah, and that confirms what one of the intelligence chiefs that it's at the ceasefire meeting said, that the fighters were angry that their families were being killed.
Yeah, yeah,
And he basically just says it right there, exactly the same sentiment, that they're killing their families. They're using this AI, targeting technology and just wiping
yeah.
out their families.
If the enemy thinks he can dismantle Hamas, he is delusional. So the word delusional has been thrown around a lot. Um, USA Today, I just saw a headline which says Israel pulls out of peace talks, citing delusional Hamas demands. So
Right. Do you want to go through those?
yeah, let's go back
So
over delusional.
yeah.
John wants to look through
Which
and
one?
see.
I want to find which one
He
is
wants to find the
delusional and over
delusional.
the top.
He
And
wants
I
to
want to be
find.
fair-minded here
Yeah,
because
let's
that's
be
that's
fair.
what we are. We're being
We're fair and
professional.
balanced. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
we're going
fair
to do
and
this
we're
professionally.
balanced. This
And
is
we're going to try to not have it, we're going to try to make these universal principles that everybody can believe in, not specific to the Israel-Palestine conflict here.
well, yeah,
Um,
because we wouldn't want to say like we wouldn't want to say that like hospitals are sacred but not for Palestinians, or we wouldn't want to say that like
should we do
um
the hospital first? We didn't do Nasser.
okay, so I want to do we should talk about Nasser Hospital before we do this. And about Nasser Hospital, the Israelis bombed. Not they've been besieging you. We talked, I think you on Electronic Intifada and me, we talked about that incredible doctor who the whole doctor hold my coat, right? She's
Yeah,
just like she throws her coat
total
and she
legend.
just goes under sniper fire to rescue somebody.
Yeah.
Just I don't know, I've never seen anything like that.
No, everyone around her, you can tell everyone around's being like, "What should we do? Are
They're
you want?" And
shaken.
she just goes, "Nah,
Yeah.
you hold my jacket."
I
So
know what you
yeah,
could do.
yeah.
So
I showed that after the resistance fighters today because I wanted it to be clear that it's a multi-pronged approach.
that's this hospital. And the other thing in this hospital is they sent someone, they sent a prisoner in a hazmat suit or something, right? To tell people to evacuate. And then they sent him in there. There's photos of him telling them to leave, and then they shot him as they
He
killed
goes
him.
back outside the door
And
and they
they
shoot him outside the door
yeah,
and he pulls himself into the lobby of the emergency room and nobody can go get him. You can see on the camera that there's all kinds of people all stacked up in the hallway and the whole foyer of the ER, the entrance where the ambulance drops people off. People aren't going in there. And somebody as courageously as that doctor that we just talked about, just as courageously, went and took us, like went around the edge to not go into the doorway because anyone in the doorway gets shot by a quadcopter floating outside of the hospital. It's unbelievable what we're watching. And one guy courageously goes and puts the gurney, underneath them. The I don't know,
slides it under.
gurney's not the word. What is it like?
I think that's the right word. Stretcher. I mean,
Stretcher,
yeah.
puts the stretcher under him, and they're up against the wall because anyone that moves into the doorway of the emergency room is shot dead. So that's crazy, and that's been going on for like you said, more than a week. As of a week ago, they had killed 21 people in the area of the pavement circle to the entrance to the ER. 21 people as of 6 days ago, and they've been doing it every day since. So you can
So
imagine what the number of people just being sniped
and
in that one spot is. They're
and this
telling
is
people to leave the hospital
yeah.
and then sniping them. If
And this
anyone
is
comes to
hospital
the hospital,
number this is hospital number 30 or
yeah,
31 that the Israelis have destroyed.
yeah,
Uh,
33 even of
uh,
36. And they're taking over Amal, which is the hospital next door, the sister hospital, as Tarek described it. Their footage that came out of there today, they had the paramedics, the doctors, the nurses, and the patients, the elderly patients, people with clear injuries on their hands and knees on the floor, bound in the like lobby area of the ER of the main part of the hospital. So systematically dismantling these hospitals. So these stories alone are crazy. They're beyond what we've ever seen before. And then a couple hours ago, Israel put a number of missiles right through the hospital, right through Nasser Hospital, um,
the orthopedic,
through
apparently
the
it was a
orthopedic wing,
particularly
where
attack
people
level.
are maimed, delimbed from
Oh,
previous injuries,
oh.
and look at this footage, just and there's footage like this from all over the hospital of people trying to figure out what to do because people are literally being killed by the bombing in the beds that they're in, trying to heal from catastrophic injuries from previous bombings. It's just unbelievable what we're watching here, and that the governments of the world, um, that
Well,
the
the
news.
government, I do want to say something about the Canadian governments.
Well, will
Uh,
the Canadian media report on this? Will
no,
this be a story tomorrow morning in the news? Will this
but
be a story?
there's a hospital thing going on in the Canadian media, John. There was a demonstration that walked past a number of hospitals, and people climbed up on the different buildings and waved their flags. And one of these hospitals was Mount Sinai. Nobody knows that this is was founded by the Jewish community. Nobody can tell the difference between one hospital and another on this stretch of Toronto that is one hospital after another, which is the main stretch that people march on for every single demonstration in Toronto about any issue. And all of them like sheep, like cattle, whatever naturalistic metaphor you want to use, they all went and condemned this. And Trudeau's stands out because Trudeau said, hospitals are a place of safety, and you don't touch hospitals. And literally, while um, Israel was doing this to every single hospital, and today they just put a missile through a hospital, and uh,
They won't say anything.
they won't say
And
anything. I
this
mean,
and the
they will. They'll
situation that you're
say
talking about, did you say there was a scaffolding in front of the hospital? It just so happened it was on Hospital
particularly
Row,
easy to
hospital
climb.
after hospital. They're doing some work to the facade of Mount Sinai. So there's a scaffolding, and this guy who climbs famously all over the city climbed the scaffolding to put the Palestinian flag as high as he could over the march as the march walked past the hospital. Didn't stop at the hospital, didn't block the doors of the hospital, walked past the hospital with him waving the flag, climbing up on a scaffolding. And then, yeah, in terms of Canadian government, it was like
Wall to wall. Yeah.
yeah, all points, everyone had to release statements as fast as they could, as detailed as they could, and be as shocked as they could. It's unbelievable times that we're living in
Yeah.
right
The
now.
discipline and the yeah. Um,
All right.
so all right. Do I have anything else? Any other news? I don't think so. I think that's
My
all the news for today.
ceasefire notes that I just wrote down from the
Yeah.
Arabic and
Yeah.
tried to
Okay.
distill for myself
Let's
have
put
now
them up.
become a
Let's put them up.
two-time used
Yeah.
graphic on this
On the
program.
sit reps. Yeah. So that's right.
My
So let's
rough
see.
copy notes.
So delusional. This is apparently
Okay,
delusional.
yeah. So which ones of these are delusional? So the beginning is the complete civilian exchange. So they hand over all the civilians from both sides. That's the part that's already done. It was done in the first prisoner exchange, and Israel messed it up at the end because they didn't want bodies included, and they dragged their feet on whether women soldiers counted as civilians. So that first part of stage one, which is 45 days, which immediately is important because it's a pause. The fighting will stop and aid can move. People can move around without feeling like they're going to die. This is a very important step. Even if the war were to carry on
Or
again,
to
a
resume.
45-day pause is critical. Um, and so then the IDF withdraws from population centers, which is pro forma for this kind of thing. Restrict aerial reconnaissance. So Qassam and Israel can't fly drones, combat drones over the area during the truce because it's dangerous for, well, it's also pro forma that you don't do it. Counts as a military flyover, and it's not, it would be in any resolution that this would be the case, but it allows Qassam to work to go and find the prisoners, which is what Israel is supposed to want. They were supposed to want to let Qassam work so that they'll go find their prisoners, which Israel, after this war, for all this time, has no idea about where the prisoners are. Um, so I don't. It's so none of those. Clearly, none of those could be over the top or delusional. Is that fair to say so far?
Nothing has emerged of those two Argentine Israeli prisoners. They haven't talked to the media or anything.
They haven't yet. No, they sometimes give them a bit of time, and that's been one of the weird things. Some people get a lot of time before we hear from them. So
All
then
right,
the
let's go
next
on.
one
Let's keep
is
going.
the population can move home. And that part of the
That's probably
population moving
delusional. Yeah.
home, they can move to the north to their destroyed homes. They can dig out their family members. They can clean up their houses and see who can live in what house and what needs to be done. And that goes hand in hand with the request for 50,000 tents a week because people are going to go back to their homes and they're going to live on tents on their homes. And that's something Palestinians are going to do. While everybody talks about Palestinians being pushed into the Sinai, what Palestinians are actually going to do is all go home and live in the rubble. And they're going to cook tea, and the barber shop is going to have a blown out wall, and they're going to carry on with their life. And it's one of the most amazing things the community pulls together and cleans up. And that's what they want. They want to begin the cleanup. Restore civil defense equipment is the next one. That's for the cleanup. Let them have diesel fuel to run their tractors. Let the tractors come in from Egypt that are waiting to come in to help dig out the 10,000 people or more who are stuck under the rubble. The restoration of the hospitals is there's no way that's delusional or over the top. So those don't seem to be it. Um,
Did you see the story of how Egypt is apparently building some fence?
yeah, they're bricking the wall along the
Oh, so you're
Philadelphia
saying
corridor.
you're like what I saw on including like the Resistance News Network was they think they're building like a concentration camp kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what it looks like. I mean, I don't know how well brick walls hold up. I'm not sure. I mean, there's a reason why they haven't done it that way. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's been footage showing
It just looks
construction.
completely unworkable to me. I don't know what they think. I don't know what they think they're gonna do, but I don't think that plan is workable.
No,
So I
well, I like I said, the most the and even if you read the Associated Press article about it, the one Palestinian that they find, the mother, the grandmother, and they ask her, "Would you go to Egypt if it's safer?" And she says, "I'm not going to Egypt. We're
yeah.
not going to Egypt. We'll figure something out here. We're not going to
So
Egypt."
here's what I got. The Sinai Foundation, which I don't know what that is, some kind of human rights group. Egyptian authorities have begun the construction of a security buffer zone surrounded by high walls to receive Palestinians from Gaza in the event of a mass exodus. Uh, I mean, the first thing to build wouldn't even be a wall. Like, are you going to do latrines? Are you going to do like what is a wall going to do? I don't know. Anyway, there's a
No, well,
lot.
that's the main problem. They don't have any of that infrastructure. There's no
Yeah.
latrines. There's no running water. There's no
Right.
piped water.
So
Rafa,
you think they're just gonna go into this walled area and die?
I
You
think
think
that there's probably people in Egypt looking for plan Bs because
yeah,
Egypt's plan A is to not allow this to happen. And
right.
that's why they've been involved in the ceasefire talks because they're essentially they're Qassam's, um, you know, frenemy
Yes.
in these negotiations because they don't want to, like Qassam doesn't want to just have the Qataris there. Qassam wants the Egyptians there. And the Egyptians don't want an operation because an operation in Rafah to actually do what the Israelis say you have to do involves moving
It
armored
involves
vehicles
giving
down the
it involves
Philadelphia
giving
corridor.
it involves giving a big part of Egypt to Israel. That's what
Well,
it
it involves
involves.
giving the border
Yeah.
minimum the
Yeah.
border that they can operate all along the border,
Yeah.
right up along the Rafah border. which is how they'll try to cut off. That'll be a significant part of their operation, and the Egyptians don't want any part of that, and they don't want people being pushed into the Sinai either. So I can see these kind of plans coming out being sort of like a working group within the military or whatever, trying to come up with things that I just don't see happening. I think realistically, what we're going to see is people moving up the coast, to north of Khan Yunis, to the middle camps, to Darabala, and down around there along the coast. And I don't know how they're going to move the aid, because Rafah is the center of aid. It's where all the aid installations and all the distribution, insofar as it even exists, people are on crisis,
Yeah.
catastrophic famine. So it's not working very well. But insofar as it works, it's because it's in Rafah, and that's uh, the fact that this is collapsing. It's the same with Khan Yunis. Destroying these hospitals in Khan Yunis is devastating on the eve of an invasion of Rafah, because the Rafah hospitals need Nasser Hospital. It's the biggest hospital in the area. It has the resources. It is the place that's needed in a war that's going to happen on
Yeah.
Rafah. Rafah is a really gritty, um, it's like a small frontier town,
Yeah.
refugee camp, just endless refugee camp. It doesn't have the infrastructure
Yeah.
to handle this invasion. It's brutal. So the fact that, and just to say, the IDF division, the 98th Division commander who is in charge of the fight in Khan Yunis, said 2 days ago that we have dismantled and destroyed Qassam, dismantled and destroyed Hamas in Khan Yunis.
Sure.
And he said that. And then after saying that, they're attacking the hospital, putting missiles through the hospital. So it, it,
Like they don't really care what they say. They don't really think anybody's trying to match what they say to
But they
reality.
are
They're
pulling
just
out. So they
saying
are pulling
things.
out of Khan Yunis. They don't want to be in Khan Yunis anymore, but they want their first and their last interaction in Khan Yunis to be devastating a hospital full of
Hospitals.
people that are already, part of the 70,000
Sure.
Palestinians that have been seriously wounded, because we know people who are very wounded are not even going to the hospital at this point. So when we have 70,000 wounded, we're talking very wounded people. Unbelievable. The depth, it's deranged. The state has lost its mind. And the fact that our governments so easily jump in on these things
Yeah.
while this hospital situation is happening, while they're like point by point dismantling every single hospital in the Gaza Strip, every single last hospital. Anyway, so 50,000 tents. I don't know how that could be over the top. I don't know where you're expecting people to live for the next 2 years. Well, it takes to clean up the Gaza Strip, which is what it's going to take, which is the reason why they want 60,000 caravans, like Atco trailers, sort of permanent, um,
Yeah, this is all
permanently.
delusional because as from Israel's perspective, like if we were going to let all this happen, why would we just have destroyed it in the first place?
Yeah.
It's kind of, I mean, and that's the absurdity of this is also is all like I've always found this so absurd. Like donors come and donate and they build all this, they rebuild Gaza and then Israel destroys it again. And then the donors come and build it. And it's like, I don't
Yeah.
get it. I don't get it.
Yeah. So next on the list is the over the top request for electricity.
Right.
The next one's over the top request for telecommunications, water, civic infrastructure, which involves sewage, roads, collecting
Yeah.
garbage,
Like all
um,
the stuff that everybody has, all the stuff that the people calling this delusional take for granted.
all the things that everyone in the world takes for granted.
And
And then
everybody, yeah,
some of this stuff is, maybe this is the over the top stuff. No rearrests. Hamas wants them to say that they won't rearrest the people that they just let out, which they're already doing from the first exchange. 500 trucks a day that is the most reasonable ask for Qassam, because that's the number that was decided upon in the first exchange. And Qassam could easily have put that number to 800, because we know that they need
Mhm.
1800 a day just to get caught up on the
Mhm.
on the deficit that's been created. So 500 trucks a day is actually a very reasonable, very under the top request. It's smaller than the number that used to come in every day before the war started. Um, Open the borders to Rafah so so wounded people can seek care. That is clearly not over the top. There's human rights organizations in every country that facilitate this kind of medical, whatever the positive name for medical tourism is, medical solidarity. And the people of Gaza, now that all their hospitals have been dismantled, need this more than anyone in the world. So open the borders to Rafah so people can pass through the desert and get into the airport and leave the country. Nobody wants to stay in Egypt. There's no reason for that to be over the top. And then there may be, I guess, the parts are the numbers of prisoners released. But I don't see Qassam um, tanking section one because the 1,500 prisoners and 500 prisoners part, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. They want the things that are up higher on that list for the first stage, because Qassam is holding, as we can see there, they're holding stage two. Stage two is the soldiers. Stage one could be a ceasefire, a pause. It doesn't have to be forever. It can give the Israelis whatever language they want to use. Who cares? Start the process, let the negotiations continue, and deal with the top three-quarters of that list. That's all just very basic stuff. Let Gazans work. They're not at nowhere on that list does it say bring in international specialists in infrastructure rehabilitation, right? It says we'll do it ourselves. I find this to be a very honorable document under really brutal circumstances that uh, should be accepted by the other side. Um, and if you want to say that the number of prisoners, like I could put a little asterisk beside that 1,500 prisoners,
Mhm.
you can negotiate over that number. Like the Israelis want it to be 3-1, and I think at this point Hamas wants it to be 100-1, which they said when Israel backed out of the first pause. Israel backed out of the first pause, and Qassam said it's not going to be 3-1 the next time. Like this is the time when it's 3-1. Next time it's going to be a lot higher than that. So
Well, I guess Israel is too far gone to be able to make an agreement.
So what's
And
our prediction that they're going to take 2 weeks to clear out Rafah by while meanwhile bombing from the air? They're going to
yeah.
destroy the last of the hospitals in Khan Yunis, and then they're going to let people walk up the coast for an assault on Rafah, where there's 4 battalions according to the
Yeah.
IDF. There's 6 battalions according to Netanyahu, and according to the chief of staff of the IDF, there's 10,000 fighters, which would be 10 battalions in Rafah. So they don't have the foggiest idea who they're fighting and how
No,
long.
they've never had. But yeah, I mean, it's it it feels like a repetition of what they did in October, November, the end of October, I guess, where they said we're going in for weeks. They said they were going in. They bombed and bombed and bombed, and then they really did go in, and they went in at tremendous cost to themselves, to their armor, to their soldiers, to their commanders. They went in and they lost. We don't know. We still don't know, but probably thousands of Israeli soldiers. We've tried to make estimates on this program of that.
I think it's fair to say 1,000 for sure. That
Yeah,
they have 600 officially named.
it's more. It's probably more. So the um and they kept going and they kept going and they kept committing unbelievable atrocities, and they were taken to the International Court of Justice, and they kept going. And so I just,
I know they don't
they're
care.
they're far gone. They're far gone as a society. They're far gone as a military.
And it's not going to matter that Biden called it our operation, is it? Like that's not going to mean anything.
Oh, if anything, it means, it's more, that makes it more likely to happen, right? Because
Yeah, I
because
think the implication of our operation is that they're going to push to have the civilians moved out in some kind of, like, the word they didn't they use,
yeah,
credible, some kind of
I don't think that,
credible
yeah, like
plan.
I said, that's all trash to me. It's
Yeah.
just, it's not worth the paper it was written on.
Yeah, I mean, we can report this entire war, and we basically have, without the traditional news media and without anything
Yeah,
that comes out of the press conferences from the Pentagon, from the State Department, from the White House.
yeah, those are all absolute misinformation at best.
Even from the cynical people that we are, we used
Yeah,
to dine out on
yeah,
media, and we
yeah.
would go
Take it
through it with a
apart.
fine-tuned comb to find the one little piece of data.
Nuggets. We
There's
called
no
them
point this
nuggets.
there's no point this war. You
Yeah.
have Telegram channels from the Israeli military. You have their TikToks that show you everything you need to know. You don't need to pass it through the best war strategist.
Yeah.
So and then the resistance is showing us the videos that they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing about Nasrallah, he said they released a video the other day, and he said we release these videos because you lie,
Yeah.
and we want you to know that we did it.
Yeah.
It's just
Absolutely.
such a Nasrallah way to say it.
Absolutely. And that's it. We also used to lament, remember, that they weren't letting journalists in, and that they weren't letting international journalists in to cover things. And it's like, those international journalists, those Western journalists that would have been allowed in, they wouldn't have made a bit of difference. They
Oh,
would
they
have
wouldn't have
just
lasted for
lies.
5 minutes at Shifa Hospital.
Yeah.
They would have been running to the IDF saying, I want out of this
Yeah.
situation. This is
Yeah.
so far beyond what any of them believed they were ready for.
So what they have done is they've embedded with the IDF, and then they've just repeated whatever lies the IDF tells them to repeat.
Yeah.
And
They've
that's
all,
been the role of the reporters on the ground. And
yeah.
then you have the spokespeople back in Washington that just serially lie and just say, I don't know.
Yeah.
You have official spokespeople whose job is to know things and answer questions. We're like, I don't know, and I'm not going to answer that question.
Yeah. Those
So
State Department, I don't know if people listening to this show watch those State Department
Matt
uh
Miller and Joe Kirby, or
yeah,
whatever they're, yeah.
yeah,
Kirby actually,
unbelievable.
yeah. Kirby
Unbelievable.
actually said something like the Israelis are better, they behave better than the Americans would have in the same situation. So they're like happy to even disparage their own military, uh, for
That's
the
so
sake of
crazy.
praising.
It's actually not true.
Yeah, it's not true. What Israel is doing is worse. I mean, we both studied Afghanistan, Iraq, U.S. behavior in those. Nothing to No, we have nothing good to say about that. Like, there's nothing good to say about the way the U.S. behaves, about the way U.S. soldiers kill teams, the way
Yeah,
they would
death squads for a
strafe
decade.
villages. Yeah, mines, cluster bombs, horrific things. And what Israel's doing is worse.
Yeah. In other combat, the hospitals, like we saw it in Syria, hospitals occasionally find themselves geographically in the
Yeah,
nature of warfare on the
yeah,
front line. The way the front line shifts puts the hospital in
yeah.
jeopardy. And that particular hospital is in jeopardy for a reason of lines on a battlefield.
Mhm.
That is not what is happening
That's not
in the
what's happening.
Gaza Strip. Israel is going into the hospitals that are minding their own business, trying to
Yeah,
deal with
save lives.
the
Yeah,
unbelievable carnage that Israel, the 100,000 casualties. serious casualties that require. It's horrifying. It's beyond words. That, and we're just it's they're the target. They're not in the
Yeah.
way of something. They're not on their way. I mean, I feel like that I just had deja vu from like the first week of November when it was like, are they actually they're
Yeah.
actually going straight to these hospitals. Look at this map. There's no other way. They're just going right to the hospitals. And that was clear on even the like war, like the war mappers, as we
Yeah.
call them, the like war institutes doing the maps that show like, oh, where the Israelis have been,
Yeah.
making it look like the Israelis control all of Gaza. Even in those first maps, there was just a straight line over to the hospital,
Yeah. Like the
down.
arrow, when you see the big arrows go straight for all the hospitals.
Yeah, but they didn't talk about it that way. Yeah,
All right.
it's dark. I think we ended our last show with a bit of a therapy session, but it's dark times right now, and I think things can never go back to the way they were before. The demonstrations have to be ratcheted up. Uh, I feel like the fear that they've put in that the lobby has put in people, that they're going to come for your jobs and your careers. I think people are going to have to bind together and accept that life that is, and look after each other and make sure it doesn't happen. But to not be afraid of it, because things, this cannot be normalized.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, we'll be back probably tomorrow.
Abu
Um,
Hadi's speech on Friday,
yes.
and he
Nasrallah will
said
be
he was going to
speaking
focus
again.
on Gaza. So we should at least do a Friday night show where we talk about that.
We'll break that down. Maybe we'll take tomorrow off. We'll see. All right, everybody. Like and subscribe and stuff.
Thanks for having me on.
Till next time.